Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see you all today. I am very excited to have you all here. My name is Velvet Nelson, and I am the director of Launch Chapel Hill. So welcome, everyone. Just a few housekeeping items really quickly. If you are on the line, go ahead and mute yourself. We don't want to have any interruptions during the session, so we appreciate it ahead of time if you will go ahead and mute yourself. Thanks so much for joining us here today. We are very, very excited at Launch Chapel Hill about this series that we're launching today with Carpe. We here at Launch, we are trying to build a startup ecosystem and hub for entrepreneurs in Chapel Hill, Orange County, and beyond. And one of the things that we want to do here at Launch within our mission is to provide a level of network and support for any entrepreneur that walks in the door when they start accessing the resources that we make available to everyone. So one of the ways that we are doing that through our mission is by launching this series of Fireside Chats. So our goal is to meet monthly with our network and have an opportunity to hear from entrepreneurs that have either used our resources, are in the ecosystem, or are familiar with what we do here through UNC and through Innovate and Town of Chapel Hill and Orange County, really as a way for other entrepreneurs to hear stories. You know, you read articles in Fortune 500 about, people starting a company and in 6 months they raised $20 billion and they've launched an IPO, and that's not always the case. And so we want to hear stories from entrepreneurs and their journeys and how it all unfolded. And that's really the point of this series and why we're here today, because we want to hear some different perspectives. Just so you all know, Launch Chapel Hill exists because of the support of the Town of Chapel Hill, Orange County, and UNC. So we are held in partnership with those three entities and are very grateful for being here because of them. I had the pleasure of meeting David and Casper through a mutual connection, Wilson McWilliams, who owns JW&N Consulting Group. So I wanted to send a special shout out to Wilson for this introduction. I'm so grateful that I had the pleasure and opportunity to meet David and Casper through him and bring them in for this first chat. So with that being said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen because this is supposed to be a networking conversation event. And so there will not be any slides that you look at today. We're just going to have the pleasure of hearing from David and Casper. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and get started. So I just found out that David and Casper received some pitch coaching from our awesome pitch coach, Tim Flood, who helps all of our launch companies. He's a communications professor at UNC. So at the risk of putting you in trouble with your communications coach, why don't you start by giving us the 30-second elevator pitch about Carpe and what you all do?
Yeah, first, Tim, I love the elf figure in the back. That made me smile. Carpe, there it is.
There he is, yeah.
So Carpe is sweat control for all areas of the body. It was born out of a personal problem that Casper and I had with sweaty hands and the lack of solutions available to us. And we wanted to make something that first worked for us and then hopefully worked for everyone else out there who had the same problem as we did, sweaty, embarrassing hands. And what we learned over time was that for the sweater, for the heavy sweater, it's not just about sweaty hands. It's not just about sweaty pits or sweaty feet or sweaty faces. It's really about total body sweat management. And so that's really what the focus is. And right now we sell mostly online, direct to consumer on Amazon. And we're also in CVS, Rite Aid, Target, and our head of sales is actually on the line, Jess Hoskin, and she just landed Walmart for us. So we're going to be launching in Walmart in January 2021. So congrats, Jess.
Congratulations. So wait a minute. I want to back up a little bit. So you were sitting in your dorm and you're like, oh, I sweat a lot. Like, how did this actually come to fruition?
Yeah, so it really started in high school. I mean, going on dates, like holding hands. I went to a Catholic high school, holding hands during like the Our Father. it was just miserable. It was disgusting. It was gross. And it just killed my confidence. So I started doing some research and looking into like home remedies, things that could help. I remember like, putting my hands in black tea and seeing if that would work. I read that online at some point. And I started making dermatologist appointments and brought like a little executive summary. I didn't have anything wrong with me. So the dermatologist would walk in and it'd be like, so what's going on? And be like, well, I actually just have an idea that I wanted to run by you, and figured it was worth the copay, and got some really good feedback and direction from them and from some local material chemists. I grew up in Atlanta, so from Georgia Tech, and just kind of had this idea. And it going to college, it never left me. So Casper went to Duke, I went to UNC. We were living together this summer after our freshman year in New Orleans, working different internships, but living in the same house. And one night I, brought this idea up, and we start going back and forth, and Casper Casper has kind of this complete opposite set of skills than I do. So I was really attracted to him because he's infinitely smarter than I am. And I was like, I have this idea, I have this problem, and I feel like he'll get it, and not only get it, but know what to do with it and really make this happen. And so we started talking about it, and we really started just figuring out next steps in order to try to make this happen. So after that, we went through well over 60 prototypes over the course of a year in a UNC dorm room, getting free kind of chemical samples from suppliers that thought we were this big company, and just iterated, tested the formula on ourselves. We would, apply it to our hands and then watch scary videos of people like hanging off buildings to test one against the other, and tested on people around campus who got sweaty hands, and finally found something that really worked. And that became Carpe.
So Casper, what was your initial reaction when David was like, hey, I have this problem and I've done some customer discovery by paying insurance copays? What was your reaction?
I think David confused intelligence for cynicism, because I'm no smarter than him, but I'm definitely a lot more cynical. To wit, not your copays, your parents' copays, unless I may be mistaken. Maybe you were, pulling out your pocket change to get him paid. But, when David first told me about the idea for Carpe late one night, June 29th, 2014, in a New Orleans apartment with all the lights off because everybody else had gone to bed. He was recovering from his leg surgery, so he had his leg propped up with an ice pack on the couch. So it's a very unforgettable scene. I said, I have sweaty hands too, obviously, but I think the reason there's not a solution is because there's not demand for a solution. And I think at the same time I was also saying, like, I don't think there's significant demand, and also like this can't be an original idea. Like, people must have done this before. And it was like, no, I've been talking to dermatologists, and there's nothing effective out there. They're they're very excited by this idea. They think, why aren't people making underarm antiperspirants for the hands? And I said, listen, I'm going to Google this and I'm going to prove you wrong. And I Googled it and I proved them wrong, because there were a ton of hand antiperspirants out there. And I said, I don't know if this has any potential, but like at least buy these and see, whether these solve the problem. So we did buy them on Amazon, and they were all quite bad. And, sort of to what David said about us being very complementary and opposites in many regards, I think over the next few weeks, while I started by reacting to this idea with a lot of skepticism, I was very energized by, the level of effort and energy that David had already put into it. And I was just really excited to be working with him. Like, I found it very rewarding to work with David. And to some degree, I always said that, like, I chose to work with David more than I thought that the idea was going to be a world-changing idea, even though to some degree I think it's proven itself to be tremendous. But as the summer went on, I wasn't really going to my internship much anymore, and David and I were working on this more and more in a very intellectual sense. There wasn't much in practice we were doing. We were just researching things and trying these formulas, but the products arrived, and it turned out they were all very, very greasy, and this was a big issue. And I don't know what the lesson is here. I don't know how much it generalizes, but I know that particularly in our space, the mistake that a lot of these companies have made, and the mistake that a lot of companies do keep making, is they had their key active ingredient that actually stops the sweat, but they didn't care about anything else about the formula. They weren't putting it in a formula that was designed to really work with people who had sweaty hands. And we said, maybe that's the innovation. Maybe we literally just take this active ingredient that stops sweat, the same active ingredients that we use for underarms, but we really develop a formula that goes on the hands, that doesn't leave residue, that dries but doesn't dry too much, that doesn't have greasiness. And our gambit at that point was basically that the reason that these products hadn't succeeded is not for lack of demand, because I think David was absolutely correct when he was speaking with these dermatologists and they were saying, hey, we need something like this, but because the solutions out there were so bad that I think people were giving up on the idea of there being a viable hand antiperspirant. So that's really what we accomplished in that first year, is I think we really made the first viable hand antiperspirant to ever hit the market. And, whether it be some kind of unique insight or whether it be luck, I think that the demand did happen to be out there. And our first really close, almost co-founder level mentors, Bootstrapped advisors, we were connected to, this is another fun story, fun coincidence, simultaneously through UNC and Duke, simultaneously through the UNC pitch party, and Howie Reed, who makes all the connections at Duke, he's Duke's entrepreneurship matchmaker, connected us with Bootstrap, who were these three guys who had just sold their previous company and were looking to kind of invest in and partner with some students. And our product was a perfect fit. They loved it. And they said, listen, there's massive search volume for a solution like this on Amazon. We think if we work with you guys to get this listed on Amazon, get the first production run made, there's going to be sales, there's going to be demand. And they were spot on about that. And that's really, how it all got started.
Wow. Okay. So you all went through 60 prototypes, found the right formula that people responded well to and seemed popular, and then used your network to meet Bootstrap Ventures, is what it sounds like.
I wouldn't say our network. I'd say UNC and Duke Entrepreneurship, like the incredible folks, Launch Chapel Hill, Tim, all of you guys, everybody here is, part of that ecosystem that connected us with Bootstrap and made this company from basically a fun side project that Dave and I had. It was a big side project. Like, we were definitely not going to class as much as we should have. But it took it from that to something that people really started buying and started using and started helping people all over the country. That's that next summer when we launched on Amazon.
Yeah. Wow. And something that I'll add, we had no idea what the hell we were doing, right?
Yeah.
So after we had the idea and we got started, it wasn't that, we then kind of just did these iterations, got to a final formula, and then found Bootstrap was introduced to Bootstrap through the UNC and Duke network. It was really that a big first step was getting into 1789. That was like really momentous for us, because it was another thing, that kind of another group of people that we could connect with and talk to and bounce ideas off of. And from there, we then pitched to the Blackstone Entrepreneurs Network. And before we did that, we met with Tim. And I remember that pitch vividly, because we got such good feedback and advice. And then from there, like Casper said, we met with Howie. We went to the Carolina pitch party. We did all of these things along the way while we were trying to make a formula that UNC and Duke offered as resources, mentors, coaches, that really helped us eventually kind of find the right partners to get this thing off the ground, because we didn't know where we were going. We didn't know what we were doing. But the thing that UNC really helped us with was figuring out who we needed to talk to answer all those questions.
No, and I think that's really good advice. Just to add a plug in again for for all the resources. We have our summer student cohort on the line today. They are participating, and one of the things that we tell them is launch Chapel Hill and innovate in 1789 is only as good as the effort you put into it. So we can provide these introductions and provide these opportunities for meetings and things, but if you really don't squeeze that lemon as hard as you can, you may not get as much out of it as you'd like. So that's a great advice, and I like it because it just backs me up. So thanks, guys. So one of the challenges that we hear about often, especially in COVID right now, is funding. And, we have a number of companies that come to us and say, oh, if I could just get a little bit of funding, it would just boost me to the next level, or it would take me to that place where I know I could really focus on this 100%. And in my research, I know that you all have had success with funding. So I'd love to hear, about your journey and how that funding has kind of played out for you and what it's done for you. But in addition to that, how it's complicated things as well, and how it's helped and how it's not helped, and really what it's done for Carpe.
Yeah, for sure. So first, I want to add, and then Casper, you can talk about the journey. The resources that neither Casper nor I mentioned were also some of the most obvious ones, which was the Carolina Angel Network and the Duke Angel Network, which led both our seed and our Series A. So I think by really investing time and energy into the introductions and the community that 1789 and launch, and the UNC entrepreneurship community, Jim Kitchen, everyone kind of opened up to us by investing in that, and by being very intentional about the questions we were asking, the advice that we were seeking. We were able to be guided in the right direction and get to the place where we needed to get with Carolina Angel Network and Duke Angel Network. So that's one thing that I want to add. Casper, do you want to talk through the journey?
Yeah, I actually also had more of a brief statement, but then I can jump into the journey. In my time, speaking with early stage founders and seeing a lot of companies rise over the last few years, these simple things keep coming back up, which I think were hammered into me in the early days and drove away a lot of the biggest misconceptions I had. And this allowed Carpe this really helped Carpe succeed, is that I think there should be this list of basically 10 commandments of starting a company that are almost universal rules to go by, and every single one has an exception, but I think it's on you to prove that your case is an exception rather than the rule. Because I think in 90% of cases, it's going to be the rule. And like the 3 ones that come to mind immediately is minimum viable product. Like you should always start with a minimum viable product. Prove me wrong. And there's exceptions, but it's on you to prove the exception. If you don't have users, you have literally nothing. You're worthless without users. In the case of a physical product, that means sales. In the case of a software product where the users are your product, it literally means like monthly active users. So you shouldn't be chasing esoteric goals unless those goals are, directly drive to users. Again, exceptions, if you're patenting like a novel molecule that cures cancer, you don't need users, you need that molecule. But in the vast majority of startups I see, you need users. And the third one is you don't need money, just like you don't need money. You need, food and shelter, and you need some way of paying surviving yourself. And if you don't have the means to do that through a college scholarship or through something, or if you're not living with your parents, you definitely need to be able to survive. But beyond that, your company doesn't need money, and needing money is the exception. And the funny thing about that is you'll always need money, but I feel like there's very few people who truly waited until they really needed money to take money. And the people that I know who've done that have just built such disciplined companies that do so well once they start seeing success that it's a beautiful thing to see. I will say David and I were definitely very inexperienced. I think Carpe could probably, if we had more experience, have gotten to where it is today with less money raised, but certainly I don't think we would have gotten to where we are without any money, right? It's just that I think by the time we took money because we had a very specific thing and we very much needed it. We developed the entire formula. We got through all the testing there with effectively no money spent. We really only took money from Bootstrapped when we needed to go to production. And the reason we needed money for production is because of the particular laws regarding our product. Like we need to use a certified and FDA audited manufacturer. We need certain batch records. We need certain, stability testing and stuff like that, or the product is otherwise literally illegal. If we were just making a deodorant, if we were just making a cosmetic, I think we could have probably gotten away legally with making it in our kitchen at certain batch volumes. And that would have been, I think, the right thing to do instead of going and raising money and doing a production run. So I think the guiding principle for people who are saying like, I need money is, do you really, really need money? Like, is there literally no way to get out of this without money? Because if so, then I think you've got a good case for going out and, if you're in this community and if you're talking to these people, there's a lot of incredible resources for money at all the various stages that you needed at. So like David said, the first significant funding we got came from Carolina Angel Network and Duke Angel Network once we graduated college in 2017, and they led our seed round. And that was amazing because I think Carpe definitely didn't fit in the mold of a typical consumer products good company. Like all the fundraising advice, all the VC advice we were reading just wasn't really working for us. And we can get into the details of why, but like the VC model wasn't exactly going to be our thing, but at the same time, we were basically a pretty high growth startup that needed that kind of capital infusion. So we're just very grateful for this network for not only that, giving us the seed, but also I think almost even bigger than that is the follow-on a couple years later of our Series A, also led by Carolina Angel Network and Duke Angel Network. And really, I couldn't have imagined that round going better because we kind of all came into that round, David, us, existing investors, Ken and Dan, saying like, we think these are the fair terms. And they were like, yeah, we kind of want to put in money at those terms. And the biggest thing too was that by working with the same partners who've just been incredible, we didn't have like a change of control or anything, no shifting of the board. I feel so lucky to have the board that we have. I think we have such a great board. And I think that's so much a function of, the folks at Ken and Dan basically trying to put the company ahead of their own interests. Frankly, they really put in a structure and put in board members that were about company success and not necessarily pitting like investors versus founders, which I've seen happen with some more major VCs. So very, very grateful for that.
In terms of the kind of day-to-day journey of what it looked like, raising the seed was, what you typically hear. A lot of outreach, pitch deck that changes 50 to 60 times before it's really accepted well. And one thing that fundraising helped us do was really figure out what our full vision was, because it made us sit down and think about how we would pitch this to someone that's going to put money in. Like when we talk about it informally, it's like, oh, we want to do this, we want to do this. But when you have to really sit down and say, what is our like 5-year vision for this? It oftentimes makes you kind of rethink your entire strategy. And so that's what we saw happen. We did a lot of, we probably emailed for that seed round, hundreds of people, took, well over 75 calls and just really kind of tried to find everyone out there that was interested in helping. And we were also strategic about it. One of the things that we did do well was we went out and said, if there could be anyone involved in our business, if there's anyone on the planet, who would we want? Like, who would be the most valuable person to be involved in our company? And our answer was the former CEO of Proactive, the acne company, because we saw hyperhidrosis, we saw sweat in a similar way that acne was seen in the 80s, which was, hey, this isn't really a problem, but it's actually a huge market. And then Proactive came along and with a system, and then really got the word out and built awareness, and actually it was a smashing success. So to learn from someone that ran that company would be immensely helpful and valuable. And so what we did was we reached out, just like we reached out to any investor. We found him on LinkedIn, we messaged him, gave him a quick pitch, gave us our email. We just asked for advice, 15 minutes. Hey, can we hop on the call for 15 minutes? We'd love to pick your brain. And then developed a relationship with him over time. And eventually he was an investor. So our rounds were a combination of angel groups and high net worth individuals like Seth that could bring advice and guidance and value to the business outside of the money alone. So that's kind of how we approached each round. And then we also did take some traditional VC money, just not as the lead. And again, it's just, if one person isn't the right investor, who do they know that may be, and who can they introduce you to? And also, I think one thing that was key was just always asking for feedback. How can we, it's a no, how can we be better? What didn't we hit? What are your concerns? And really taking those concerns to heart, because it's easy to get feedback. I think it's harder to really take that feedback to heart and take action based on it, to recognize, hey, something is wrong and something needs to change about this. And so that's kind of goes back to all of those iterations of the deck. Originally, our vision for the company was to have, a hand, foot, and underarm antiperspirant for hyperhidrosis, and then expand into eczema and psoriasis and rosacea and all of these other dermatological conditions. But through the process, really found that the biggest opportunity is in sweat and defining sweat and sweat management for all areas of the body and focusing on that. And that's something that we found through the fundraising process.
Well, if people on here know me well, they know that I say this stuff all the time. So I did not prompt David and Casper in this conversation to say all these things. But no, this advice is what we continue to hear when raising funds. Don't ask for money, ask for advice, and be strategic in who you ask to give you money. Because at the end of the day, when you raise money, they're taking a part in your company and they want to see it be successful. So they should play a part in making that happen. And so finding investors that are believe in your vision and your mission and want to help is really the key in helping you grow. So I love to hear that advice because it's very true. So with that in mind, let's talk about mentors that you have found that have been extremely helpful. And it sounds like you've talked a little bit about the CEO of Proactive, but how did you lean on your mentors? What did those mentors look like for you? And how have they played a role?
Yeah, first they played a huge role. I think first recognizing that we don't have the experience, we don't have the knowledge or expertise to do this on our own. And we need, it's an absolute must to find people who've been there and who've done it and can help guide us to get to the same place. And first it was finding each other, right? Because Casper and I could not do it without each other. And so having each other to lean on to bounce ideas off is absolutely crucial. So, spending the time to find the right co-founder, the right partner, the right spouse, for the business is absolutely key. That's the first step. Casper's, a mentor of mine, right? So I think finding someone that is that perfect partner and spending as much time as it takes to find that right person is key. And then second, on the mentors like Seth and like Bootstrapped, and others. There's a guy named Russell Moon who started a brand called SkinCeuticals. It's just kind of getting in that mindset of, if I could talk with anyone who's been there and who's done it, who's been successful, who would that be and what questions would I ask? Figuring out the questions that you would ask is a lot harder than it seems, and it takes a lot more time than anyone really thinks. And I think being intentional about thinking through like what answers do I need, and what questions, if I had answered, would be overwhelmingly valuable for me and my business. I would spend a lot of time doing that. And, another example is like the founder of Native. Native was a deodorant company that sold to P&G for $100 million less than 2 years after this guy named Moise started it. And we heard him on a podcast, reached out to him, and got his email, reached out to him and asked for 15 minutes. And he hopped on the phone. People love talking about themselves. People love sharing their advice and guidance. So just going out and being, tactful about who you want to speak with, and then, not being afraid to reach out to them and ask for 15 minutes. Even offering, hey, for 15 minutes, like, I'd love to pick your brain, can toss you a $20 Starbucks gift card, whatever it is. I just really want to learn from you. I want to learn from you. And I think if that's the right attitude going in, you're going to get a lot out of it. In terms of what mentors have helped us with, everything from marketing to operations to management. I think on the marketing side, the direct consumer marketing, the retail marketing, just retail in general, Amazon, those are all things that we've gotten a lot of advice and guidance from. On the management is something that I don't think comes naturally to most. And so really kind of not being afraid to hire a coach or do stuff like that and ask questions about how you should be more effective, can be more effective at managing. That's been really helpful. And then on the ops side, just kind of, how to manage inventory planning, inventory demand models, all of that kind of stuff, forecasting, budgeting. Mentors can help with pretty much anything that you need. You just have to be willing to ask and open to the feedback and open to learning.
That's great. Casper, do you have anything to add?
I would just echo all of that. That we really had no idea what we were doing going in. And to this day, I think we're pretty decent at what we've done, but we're still not good at whatever we're actively doing. So, you're always looking for mentors to help guide you through the next step of that growth. And ultimately, a business is literally nothing except the people that make it. Without the people, it doesn't exist. And so like David said, it starts with your co-founder, it starts with your founding partners. That's the first most important layer. And then you have all the mentors that you are, that are teaching you and helping you grow. And then you have your employees, your team. And that's kind of the order gets added into the company. But those are the things you need to focus on above all else, I think, when you're growing a business, because that's how you actually build the business rather than just the product that you're going to be selling.
100%. I mean, I think you said it best. It's a marriage when you find your co-founder. So that should be your first mentor, and then building a team of resources around you. I sent them a list of questions before we got started today, but I'm going to go a little bit rogue. Has it been harder for you to manage the people or actually manage the business?
So one thing that I missed that I didn't mention on like what have we reached out to mentors about is hiring. Hiring is really hard.
Yeah.
Finding the right people, and it's the hardest, right? And so that's been a huge learning curve. One of our biggest weaknesses by far, historically, has been hiring. And I think through a lot of trial and error, a lot of failure, we have really started to figure it out. And the team that we have right now is absolutely world-class. And it makes me extremely happy every morning, every afternoon call, just seeing everyone's face and thinking about how much it took to get to the team that we have today, because hiring someone and then learning how to manage them is one of the single hardest things that I think myself and Casper have ever had to do. And that's something that I actually don't think we leaned on mentors enough for. I think we could have asked more questions and gotten more advice, but it just seems like, oh, you're hiring someone. Like you put out a job application and you look through the applications and then you hire someone and then you manage them. It doesn't seem like that obvious of a thing to really lean on others for with experience. But what you quickly find is that it is one of the single hardest things you'll ever have to do. A lot more than managing the business.
Right. Yep. No, I can see that completely.
Also, like a business really, like Casper said, a business really isn't anything without its people. Like obviously there's the brand, but the brand is made by the people inside some office walls or behind a computer if everyone's remote. So
I want to give time for questions. So I'm going to ask this question of you all, and then we'll go into a question and answer period for the team and the participants. What are biggest lessons learned for you all?
There's so many. The one that's on my mind right now, just because it dovetails exactly with what David was just speaking about, is you want to be thrifty with literally everything except people. That's the one exception. Don't be thrifty with people. Don't be like, hey, let's try to find the one person who's going to do this job for $20,000. Like, get great people and pay them what they're worth. That's a big lesson.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that.
I think all startups try to be scrappy. And I know that's tough. And that leads a follow-on question, and then I'll shut up. How has it been negotiating equity with your first team members, and has that been a challenge for you all? I know protecting your cap table is tough?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. Casper and I's philosophy on fundraising and equity from the very beginning has been less about how do we kind of maximize our own stake and more about how do we get the best partners in the most time effective way that gets us back to building the business as quickly as possible and helps us make this first one as successful as it can possibly be. I think more than anything, having your first startup be successful, and we're far from that, is the single most important thing, especially if you want to go on to start additional companies. It's a lot better than any payout or any equity stake at the very end. Obviously, like control and direction and having the authority to make decisions, everything like that is really important. But how we've thought about equity is less so about, just how do we keep the most of the company and more about how do we get the right people in to make sure that we make this thing successful.
Great. Well, I want to leave time for questions and answers from our group, but I did want to take a moment really briefly to thank the Entrepreneurship Center at the Keenan Flagler Business School. They collaborated with us on this event. They are huge collaborators and supporters of Launch Chapel Hill. They will continue to be active in this series with us, and we're so fortunate for the support and resources that they provide. If you haven't been to their website, please check it out, eship.unc.edu. You mentioned the pitch party, and I think you mentioned Makeathon. I mean, all of those resources are through the Entrepreneurship Center. So we work hand in hand to make sure that everyone gets exactly what they need while they're at UNC to make, to create successful businesses or become successful entrepreneurs. So thank you, Entrepreneurship Center and Callie. So let's open it up for questions and answers. We want to hear from entrepreneurs who want to know what some good advice.
Yeah, and real quick, Velvet, one thing that I want to add to that, because I've seen it all too often, is especially and with myself, having the idea does not mean you should get more equity. And I think for all co-founders from the very beginning, it should be 50-50 no matter what. If you're truly marrying someone, if I propose to my wife and I'm like, hey, so I think there should be a 65-35 split, I don't know how that would work long-term, right? So I think no matter what, if you are looking to partner with someone and to really kind of do something together, it has to be equal, should be equal from the very beginning, no matter who has the idea, no matter who has X skill or Y skill or is bringing whatever to the table, bringing relationships, it doesn't matter, it should be equal.
The part that David's not mentioning is I have not met anybody else in my life who is this noble and would actually do this, but we didn't start out with an equal equity split, and like 2 years in, so David started with more equity than me, and 2 years in, he just gave me that equity to make it an equal split. Wow. Because that's what he believed, which is like the most noble thing that anybody's ever done. So yeah, we definitely both strongly believe in that philosophy of the co-founders really need to be married equally. The final note on equity that sort of stems from that with the investor relationships is there's that famous story of the founder of BET, that TV channel, went to some major attorney to get the startup investment for that company. And the guy's like, okay, yeah, I'll put in the 10 million you need to get this TV channel started, and we'll do an 80-20 split. And the guy's like, okay, that's fair. Let's sign the documents. The founder said that. And then when he got the documents, he found out that the attorney had meant that the founder's going to get 80% of the equity. And he calls him back and he's like, I would have given you 80% of the company. Why are you giving me 80%? And he's like, I think you're going to make 100x bigger of a company if you own 80% of it than if you own 20% of it. And there's a lot of investors out there who recognize that. We have had conversations with investors where they have told us that we need more equity. So, I think if you're working with the right people, they recognize that it's not a zero-sum game and that everybody needs to have a stake that really motivates them and keeps them really tied to the business.
That's great advice. And I appreciate your transparency on that. And how great is it to wake up every day and know that you are working with someone so awesome? I mean, that's for both of you. I'm sure it makes the day a lot more exciting to know you get to work together. That's great. So we have our first question from Wilson. David and Casper, can you talk about how you balance the temptation of taking profit or reinvesting the revenue the company generates? In other words, how do you handle landing Walmart but keep dreaming bigger?
Yeah, I'll take that. Thanks for the question, Wilson. I think, for us, for our space, we are trying to build a new category. We're the first hand and foot antiperspirant on shelf. We're really the first brand to go after total body sweat management. And so building a new category in the consumer space takes a lot of marketing dollars to grow, to acquire new customers, and to really build awareness. And so when we think about profit, top line revenue, the things that people in our space really value is year-over-year growth rate, top line revenue, to show that, hey, this market exists, there is traction, and this is a really big opportunity. So it's pretty simple for us. We raised money because we wanted to be able to burn cash and to spend on marketing and to grow awareness and to grow sales really fast. So that's absolutely been the focus, and that's been the focus from the very beginning, because like Tim was saying this before everyone else hopped on the call, early on, it was very much so like, oh, hand sweat, like this, who's going to buy a product for that? And so we needed to prove that people were going to buy it. And we needed to get it out there and spend money to show that there is this big market. So revenue top line has definitely been the focus, but we also have not taken the same approach as most direct-to-consumer startups, like most New York VC kind of infused direct-to-consumer startups, like a Casper that's burning insane amounts of money to get insane amounts of growth, but at a huge cost, and kind of getting in a cycle. If we wanted to, we've built the business in such a way that if we wanted to, we could be profitable today. And I think that's what's key. You always need a path to profitability. But if that's not the focus, it's great to be able to burn cash in order to keep growing really fast.
Great. Other questions? Oh, what were the biggest concerns, pushback from mentors, investors, and what did you do to gain their confidence?
One of the single biggest concerns from investors was our lack of experience. And the thing that we did to gain their confidence was two things. One, surround ourselves with really great mentors and advisors who've been there and done it, and lean on them. And then two, show our openness to feedback and to advice, and to be very frank about our inexperience, and to kind of confront that head on and tell them what we're doing about it.
Hey, Velvet, this is Tim. Can I actually jump in with a comment more than a question?
I guess, yes.
Thank you, appreciate it. Because I just really want to underline a couple of things that David and Casper said as they were walking through, that they are too, I think, humble to say for themselves, which is, from the early days, right? They were both so tenacious. They knew they had a good idea. They had to convince some people it was a good idea, but they knew for sure. They kept, they were very, very tenacious. They were always gracious and entirely open to feedback, but you could tell that they were really hungry to make this thing real and to see this vision through, right? So even as they were having to deal with people who were saying the hand sweat, up to fighting the big fights against, the competition, and getting in with other kind of brand recognition and all those kinds of things. They were phenomenally open to feedback, and they really, really reached out for every kind of advice they could, which I think is really important for everybody. But the point that I'm specifically underlining here is, and I remember, like, face to face, looking at them and saying, I'm saying something that I think is really important. and they are processing it on their own terms. Like they were totally listening to what I was saying and they would value what I was saying, and then they'd be like, except we're going to do it this way, right? And I think that's a great positive. They heard all the feedback in the world, and then they took that feedback and made it appropriate to what they were doing and to that vision and to that tenaciousness and to that goal setting that they had all the time. So I think that the things I want to underline is that sort of constant hunger and that constant faith in yourself and your vision is definitely going to be framed by as much feedback as you can get. But still, it's your vision, right? It's your vision, and it's your thing. You're the ones that can grow the company, you know, better with the higher equity stake or whatever, and all those things, because it was your inspiration in the first place. So that's it from me. Thank you guys very much for being here. Great to see you again.
I appreciate it, Tim. I love that you were a part of their story early on and are here to kind of reflect as a mentor and an advisor on how the journey went for them. I think that's phenomenal, and I appreciate your insight. That's beautiful. Any other questions? And feel free to speak up. You don't have to type them in.
While we're waiting on questions, a couple things. One, Tim, I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. And two, you have the best sound quality of anyone I have ever heard over Zoom. It's
That's amazing. A very nice way for you to say that I'm loud.
No, right. I thought you had like a mic. It sounds like you have a professional mic. It's amazing. And then the last thing that I wanted to hit on was something that Casper did after our board meeting a couple of weeks ago that made me laugh. He was like, I'm frustrated. I'm like, why are you frustrated? Like, they didn't tell us why we're bad. Like they didn't tell us what we're doing wrong. And I think that just kind of, yes, focusing on growth and focusing on the things that are going well is great, but really being vulnerable with people and really kind of saying, hey, I want to understand what I'm not doing well is something really hard, something that Casper does really well, and something that he's taught me a lot about. So just wanted to add that. I did see a question pop up. How did you prioritize your spend from hiring needs to marketing, biz development? Casper, you want to take that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because the fact that I don't really have an answer makes me think that that's probably not the framing that we approach it with. So the actual question is like maybe even a step back from that regarding like how do we even think about spend. I overthink everything. I don't think I'm going to give a succinct or great answer, but I guess my stab at it is like you're building this machine as you're going along, and I think you kind of have to think about two things at all times. One is keeping the machine afloat, and the second is investing in growth. And your best investment at any given point, you know, the highest ROI might come from a hire, the highest ROI might come from product dev, and you have to make that call on the fly. And if you don't have experience, that's where mentors can help out. They can really see like where you're lacking. Nearly all of our hires came because our mentors were like, you guys need to stop doing everything yourselves because it's limiting the growth of the company. And we said, no, we're amazing. We can do everything. And they were right. As soon as we started hiring people, like the company started growing again. So that was definitely feedback we needed to hear. And that was like a good assessment of where we're going to get good ROI of our money, where we're going to get a good ROI of our time, because hiring is a huge time sink. And then the other thing is obviously just keeping the company afloat. Obviously, you're going to spend money on whatever it takes to, you know, keep operating into the next day. But beyond that, I think like an investor with every dollar you spend.
Other questions? Like I said, feel free to speak up. Oh, Tyrell, I see you came off mute.
My question would be, when we're entrepreneurs, we definitely have a lot that we have to make sure that we're taking care of. How do you guys go about making sure that you're taking care of yourselves on the days that aren't so great and the days, because there's definitely the ups and downs. I've experienced ups and downs being in launch so far. So I definitely would love to hear your experience and your perspective on that.
I'll go quickly, just say, I think it's because we have each other. I couldn't do this at all as a solo founder. Maybe David could. He's got a bit more like emotional resiliency than I do. But it's like, I mean, frankly, the worst stuff we get hit with, one of us will be like despondent and the other person will be laughing. And it's like, there's something about the dynamic of, being in the trench with someone else that like, you can handle a lot if you're working with somebody that you really trust and that, you guys are going to fight it together. And that's an awesome feeling.
I completely agree with that. And to take it to the personal side, a good cry always helps every now and then. And just, I think recognizing when everything, there are always these times in life, and it always like everything kind of collapses at once. Usually when things start going wrong, like everything just goes wrong at exactly the same time. And recognizing that you will get out of that. Like this is always going to happen. And there's going to be an event in like several months where everything goes wrong again, but you're out of it. And remembering like what it feels like to get out of that, and knowing that you will get out of it, I think is really key. And then also making sure you take the time to make sure you just like, you can get away from it for a little bit. If it's, spending an entire weekend watching all like 52 episodes of Ozark, which I did in the height of a massive like crisis we were having, just doing what it takes to kind of get your mind off of things, relax, and remember that it's going to be all right, and you're going to get out of it on the other side, because A, you believe in yourself, you believe in what you're doing, and B, most importantly, you have your co-founder and the people around you that are going to be fighting tooth and nail to make sure that y'all get out of it on the other side. Having each other is the biggest thing.
I love it. I think, when I started my venture, I had a co-founder, and I don't think I could have done it alone. I think there are people that can do it alone, but I was not one of them. So I love to hear that. Other questions? Can you speak to the very early days of customer discovery acquisition? How did you grow your user base from zero?
Amazon product search.
A lot of testing, a lot of debate, a lot of things that did not go well. I mean, early on, we tested Facebook, we tested search, we tested. God, I can't even think of like everything.
Well, so sorry. So to clarify, from literal zero, and this is one of the reasons Bootstrap invested, is because they saw that Amazon product search and they were like, hey, you guys are on Amazon, you're going to get sales. We did. We got, I don't remember the number right now, but I'd say maybe like 100 sales a week or something. We got to that like that because we were on Amazon and we optimized the listing very well. It was getting to that next level that took like 2 years of just figuring out what on earth is going to work for us. And like David said, wasted a ton of money on Facebook, wasted a ton of money on Google. We're going to be on this big TV show that didn't end up airing, and we're still under some bad NDA, so I can't talk about that. Then we started running TV ads, and that worked. That's a very compressed reading of the story without much nuance. But I mean, David, that's kind of what it was, right? Just a lot of testing, different channels, different messaging, talking with your customers. I think to get the story right on TV and to actually really start growing, we had the messaging all wrong. And once we really started diving into Amazon reviews and having one-on-one customer conversations about who these people are, why they're buying, and what they're just hearing their stories, that really was a game changer for us in terms of how we talk to everyone else about it. And that's when things really started humming. Our first ad that really worked well, that got us off the ground, was basically we filmed us flying up to Chicago and interviewing a customer. And we filmed this whole journey, cut it into a 30 and 60-second ad and ran it. And that was really the first big thing. That and kind of Casper and I just talking about what the product is in a warehouse and telling our story. So I think learning that our message about our personal story, and then the kind of hearing that it's worked for other people,
is what kind of had made these early customers buy, and then doubling down on that message is really how we grew our user base significantly.
Awesome. Well, someone private messaged me the best question ever because I was dying to ask it, but I didn't want to. But we'll use this as the last question of today. Was it surreal for you to see yourselves in a TV commercial?
David, when's the first time you saw it? Because I don't think I saw it. Like, we've been running ads for years, and I don't think I actually saw it until last summer at like American Made or whatever that place is called, when we were with.
Yeah, we were at dinner. We did this like entrepreneur duos dinner, like kind of 4 other co-founders, and got dinner and just talked about problems and what we were doing, and it came on the TV as we were having dinner, and that was pretty crazy. It felt very weird. It was also very embarrassing because you're like, I look like an idiot.
Oh man. Well, thank you both. I think this was a phenomenal kickoff to our new series. You know, when we met with the Entrepreneurship Center and we started talking about ways to engage our community, we really felt like a personal journey story would be perfect. And so we thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to do this for us, and really appreciate it and look forward to continuing to keep you in the community and seeing your success. So thank you so much.
Thank you all so much. This was a lot of fun. We appreciate y'all having us.
Yeah. Thank you, Velvet. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and thank you for hosting us. This was great.
Oh, thanks. Have a good day, everyone.
See y'all. Bye.